Throughout her life, Queen Elizabeth II ruled with grace, resilience, and a strength that few could match, leaving behind a legacy that will be remembered for generations. Yet, as her historic reign came to a close, what truly captured the world's attention was a mysterious message she reportedly received on her deathbed. What could this message have been, and what significance did it hold in her final days? Join us as we explore the terrifying message that our Lord Jesus Christ is said to have revealed to the Queen before she transitioned to the great beyond. The mysterious message which Queen Elizabeth II is said to have received from Jesus Christ before her death is covered in mystery and wonder. A selection of individuals close to Her Majesty speculate that the Queen received this mysterious message during a time of personal prayer and quiet reflection, as she often spent some time in solitude in Buckingham Palace. Some witnesses said that she was constantly speaking about Jesus all the time. Even the former moderator of the Church of Scotland, Reverend Dr. Lane Greenshields, stated that the Queen spoke at length about her Christian faith in the days leading up to her death. She was said to have reflected on the influence of her father's faith on her life, the relationship she had with Scotland, and particularly her obsession with the Balmoral estate, where she felt very much at peace in her last days. Everyone in the palace agreed that her last days were filled significantly with mystery. When she finally left, her funeral was held on September 19, 2022, at Westminster Abbey in London. It was the first state funeral for a British monarch since 1965, when Winston Churchill's funeral took place. The funeral service was attended by over 2,000 guests, including members of the royal family, heads of state, and government representatives from around the world. An estimated 1 million people lined the streets of London to watch the funeral procession, which featured around 3,000 military personnel. After the service at Westminster Abbey, the Queen's coffin was transported to Windsor Castle, where a committal service was held at St. George's Chapel. The Queen was then interred in the King George Memorial Chapel alongside her husband, Prince Philip. The Queen's funeral was one of the most watched television events in history, with an estimated 29.2 million viewers in the UK alone. The funeral was also one of the most expensive royal events ever held. Many people believe Jesus must have told Queen Elizabeth II that he is coming soon, and the year 2024 might just be his return. Some believe that perhaps he was pleased with the message of love and acceptance the Queen showed in her reign, which transcended religious boundaries as her rule drew to a close. While what was revealed to Her Majesty keeps riding on the wave of mystery, one thing is certain. Queen Elizabeth's reign witnessed the glory of the British Empire, the rise of technological globalization, and major social transformations. As the role of religion in public life shifted, the Queen remained steadfast in her beliefs. While much of British society grew more secular, she never wavered in her commitment to the Church of England. To then try to understand why it would be possible for Jesus to send Queen Elizabeth a message in her final moments, let's explore her lifetime and her deep connection with God. The relationship between Queen Elizabeth and the Church. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II wasn't just a formal event. Rather, it was also a religious one. Elizabeth was elegantly dressed in royal regalia, a symbol of British tradition and continuity. While the coronation was a day filled with splendor and festivities, for Elizabeth, this day marked a deep spiritual commitment, a promise to uphold the teachings of the Church of England for the rest of her life. The ceremony took place in West Abbey, a place that's become part of British history, where kings and queens have been crowned for nearly 1,000 years. In that sacred space, Elizabeth took an oath. She promised to maintain the laws of God and the teachings of the Protestant faith. From that moment on, she was not just Queen of the United Kingdom, but also the Supreme Governor of the Church of England. But despite the weight of this responsibility, and however heavy it must have been on her shoulders, the Queen discharged her duties with so much elegance, grace, and great poise. Queen Elizabeth also viewed being Britain's monarch as a divine mission. It is widely believed that her coronation was more than a grand display of royal wealth and power. It was a deeply personal religious experience for Elizabeth. This is seen not just from the oath she took before the Church of England on that day, but also from the reverence she gave to the officiating priests. The Queen's belief in Christ wasn't something she only displayed in big ceremonies. It reflected in every part of her everyday life. Queen Elizabeth II attended church almost every Sunday. The British royal family attended a traditional Christmas Day church service at one of the Queen's country estates. Queen Elizabeth was joined by her son, Prince Charles, and grandsons William and Harry. She also had a personal chaplain, and whenever she was unable to attend general service, her personal chaplain provided spiritual counsel and helped with private service. She was a regular at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle. Even with her busy schedule, she was never too busy for prayer and worship, as she cherished every moment spent with the Lord Jesus. Perhaps it is the reason he reached out one last time as she drew her last breath. Queen Elizabeth II even included private devotions into her daily program, in addition to her public worship. She prayed every morning and evening, looking to her faith for direction and fortitude. Her personal Bible showed signs of frequent reading and reflection. As she had noted countless times in public, she overcame the difficulties of her position as ruler with the aid of these personal devotions. Queen Elizabeth II was unashamed of her relationship with Jesus. In fact, on the occasion of her 21st birthday, she made public commitments to serve God and the nation. Oftentimes, Queen Elizabeth II attended services at Windsor Castle to celebrate milestones in her reign and major global events, like the end of World War II. Having witnessed both world wars in human history, she strongly relied on her faith to navigate difficult times, a trait that has been a part of her lifestyle. Her faith wasn't just for show, it was a source of strength during times of national crisis like the Aberfan disaster in 1966, or the aftermath of the September 11th attacks in 2001. Elizabeth often turned to her faith to comfort her people, showing great leadership and maturity in the process. Queen Elizabeth's response to the Aberfan disaster will forever be memorable. During her 70 years on the throne, the Queen was witness to countless tragedies around the world. But there was one in a small mining village in South Wales that she never forgot. In fact, her reaction to the disaster in Aberfan was said to be one of the biggest regrets of her reign. Despite being informed shortly after the disaster struck, she waited right days before visiting the community. This delay in the Queen's response was widely criticized at the time and is something she is said to have deeply regretted. According to reports, the Queen was hesitant to visit right away, fearing that her presence would distract people from the rescue efforts and recovery. When the Queen did finally visit Aberfan on October 29th, she was visibly moved and emotional. Eyewitnesses said she shed tears during her time in the village, which was highly unusual for the typically stoic monarch. The Queen also met with grieving families and survivors, showing great humility for a highly esteemed monarch. She was handed a bouquet of flowers by a young girl with the heartbreaking inscription "From the remaining children of Aberfan." This moment had a profound impact on the Queen. and she is said to have remembered it vividly for the rest of her life. Queen Elizabeth II never hid her source of inspiration from the public. She often described the life of Jesus Christ as an inspiration and an anchor in her life, and demonstrated just that in her approach to the Aberfan disaster and several other internal and socio-political traumas she had to navigate, including the death of her daughter-in-law, Lady Diana, whom she loved so dearly. She saw the Lord Jesus as a role model who stretched out his hands in love, acceptance, and healing. Another important part of the Queen's way of life was the way she respected everyone's opinion and decisions. And although she always spoke about her faith and assessed situations by it, she never imposed any restrictions on others or judged others for their decisions. According to her, Christ's life had taught her to seek to respect and value all people of whatever faith or none. She had an inclusive approach to life, pointing to Jesus as an inspiration for people of all beliefs and saying that his love is a universal commodity. She also believed that those who follow him must understand this as well in their dealings with others. Queen Elizabeth II recognized the importance of religious diversity in the United Kingdom, and as such, she made efforts to engage with and support other faiths, including visiting mosques, synagogues, and temples during her travels. The late Queen also spoke of her personal accountability before God and how she desired for people to feel the power of God's love. The teachings of Jesus Christ were foundational to her life and her reign, showing just how deeply she valued her connection to God for her. It wasn't just about fulfilling her role as a monarch, it was about staying true to herself and her beliefs. Meanwhile, some people would argue that the Queen's devotion to the gospel of Christ was a result of her upbringing. How true is this? The formative years of Queen Elizabeth. Elizabeth was born in Mayfair, London, during the reign of her paternal grandfather, King George V. She was the first child of the Duke and Duchess of York, later King George VI, and Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Her father acceded to the throne in 1936 upon the abdication of his brother Edward VII, making the 10-year-old Princess Elizabeth the heir presumptive. She was educated privately at home and began to undertake public duties during the Second World War, serving in the Auxiliary Territorial Service. Queen Elizabeth II's faith as a Christian has been significantly shaped by both her upbringing within the royal family and the influence of her father, King George VI, on her religious beliefs. As a member of the British monarchy, she was exposed to the traditions and customs of the Church of England from a young age, fostering a strong foundation in Christian values and principles. However, it was her father's own deep faith and commitment to God that played a major role in nurturing her spiritual journey. King George VI was known for his devout Christian beliefs and his dedication to his faith. He was a regular attendee of church services and actively engaged in religious practices, setting an example for his daughter, Princess Elizabeth, to follow. Growing up in such an environment, she witnessed firsthand the importance of faith in her father's life and how it guided him in his duties as king and as a man of integrity. The influence of King George VI on Queen Elizabeth II's faith can be seen in various aspects of her life and reign. Their shared commitment to the Anglican Church created a strong bond between them, with religion serving as a source of unity and support within the royal family. The king's emphasis on duty, service, and moral responsibility left a lasting impression on his daughter, instilling in her a sense of purpose and calling that would shape her reign as queen. The coronation of Queen Elizabeth II in 1953 following the death of her father was a poignant moment that reflected the continuity of their shared faith and values. Taking the coronation oath to uphold the Protestant Reformed religion established by law reaffirmed her commitment to the Church of England, a commitment that was influenced by her father's legacy of faith and service. The presence of religious symbols and rituals during the coronation ceremony underscored the deep spiritual significance of the occasion and reinforced the importance of faith in the monarch's role. Throughout her reign, Queen Elizabeth II has maintained a close connection to her Christian faith, drawing strength and guidance from her upbringing and the lessons imparted by her father. Her frequent attendance at church services, participation in religious ceremonies, and support for charitable causes within the Christian community reflect her ongoing commitment to her faith and her desire to fulfill her role as defender of the faith. In November 1947, she married Philip Mountbatten, a former prince of Greece and Denmark. Their marriage lasted 73 years until his death in 2021. They had 4 children: Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward. When her father died in February 1952, Elizabeth, then 25 years old, became queen of 7 independent Commonwealth countries: the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, known today as Sri Lanka, as well as head of the Commonwealth. Elizabeth reigned as a constitutional monarchy through major political changes, such as the Troubles in Northern Ireland. She also witnessed the devolution in the United Kingdom, the decolonization of Africa, and the United Kingdom's accession to the European communities. The years of her reign in colonies, however, varied over time as territories gained independence and some colonies became republics. As queen, Elizabeth was served by more than 170 prime ministers across her jurisdictions. Her many historic visits and meetings included state visits to China in 1986, to Russia in 1994, and to the Republic of Ireland in 2011. She also had meetings with 5 popes and 14 US presidents. She lived a memorable life, which saw her witnessing her coronation in 1953 and the celebrations of her silver, golden, diamond, and platinum jubilees in 1977, 2002, 2012, and 2022, respectively. Although she faced occasional Republican sentiment and media criticism of her family, particularly after the breakdowns of her children's marriages and the death in 1997 of her former daughter-in-law, Diana, support for the monarchy in the United Kingdom remained consistently high throughout her lifetime. Her personal popularity was also on the high side. Elizabeth died at the age of 96 at Balmoral Castle and was succeeded by her eldest son, Charles II. Meanwhile, looking at the life lived by Queen Elizabeth II, one thing remains unclear. She reigned at a time where world politics were filled with iniquities and darkness. Yet she kept her crown, but most importantly, she remained in true service to God. What does it take to hold on to faith when the world around you is moving in the opposite direction? Let us explore Queen Elizabeth's enduring legacy in a few minutes. Queen Elizabeth's enduring legacy. The late Queen handled the challenge of modernity with grace and class, often balancing tradition and modernity in an age when the monarchy's relevance was increasingly questioned. It was clearer than rainwater and glaring to even the blind that she continued to apply her faith into her public and private life, ensuring it stayed a cornerstone of her reign. Even when it was glaring to the British populace that the Church of England was battling with a decline in attendance and debates over modern issues like equality and abortion rights were gaining prominence, Queen Elizabeth remained a force that held things together. she continued to endorse the importance of Christianity, while significantly respecting the diverse, multicultural society Britain had become. She never openly condemned anybody or any sexual, moral, or religious orientation. This balancing act wasn't always easy. For example, the question of whether the Church of England should allow female bishops was a significant issue during her reign. Meanwhile, the Church of England had been down this road before. In November 2012, it was an unspoken general consensus that enough people in the general card would vote in favor of women bishops. But in the end, they were narrowly defeated, as the supreme governor of the Church, Queen Elizabeth, had to navigate these changes carefully, showing respect for the evolving beliefs within her church, while also staying true to her own convictions. She had her own beliefs about the issue, but she claimed she suspended it to reach a compromise. Her steady walk of faith possibly gave her the wisdom to handle such delicate matters with diplomacy and grace. Also, her ability to keep faith at the center of her life, even as the world around her changed, speaks to the depth of her convictions. This wasn't just about upholding a family tradition, but living her life in accordance with her values, no matter the circumstances. As we reflect on Queen Elizabeth's life, it is clear that her faith was not just a personal matter, but a public one deeply intertwined with her role as a monarch. One of her greatest achievements was her ability to modernize the monarchy without losing its essence, by staying true to her religious convictions while embracing social change. She demonstrated that tradition and progress don't have to be at war. It is widely believed that the not-so-new King Charles would also have to navigate a similarly complex landscape, and the Queen Elizabeth's example will no doubt serve as a guide. Again, her legacy is also a reminder of the power of faith in leadership. In a world often dominated by politics and power struggles, she showed that a leader could still be guided by moral and spiritual values. Her faith was her quiet source of strength. She never forced it upon others, but it was always present, influencing her decisions and her demeanor. As the world continues to evolve, Elizabeth's reign will be remembered as a time when the monarchy maintained its dignity and relevance. In a rapidly changing world, her faith would remain a central part of that legacy, offering a blueprint for how future leaders might integrate their personal beliefs with their public roles. But now the question on everyone's mind is, after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, how is the British monarchy faring? The aftermath of Queen Elizabeth's death. In the immediate aftermath of Queen Elizabeth II's death, Prince Charles, as the heir apparent, assumed a more prominent role in representing the monarchy and carrying out official duties. As the Prince of Wales and the eldest son of the late Queen, Prince Charles had been preparing for his future role as king and had already established himself as a champion of various charitable causes and initiatives. The transition of power from Queen Elizabeth II to Prince Charles marked a significant moment of change for the British monarchy. Years after Elizabeth's death, and while the institution itself remains deeply rooted in tradition and history, there are discussions about potential modernizations and reforms that could be implemented under the new reign. More so, questions about the relevance of the monarchy in the 21st century, the role of the royal family in a rapidly changing world, and the need to adapt to evolving social norms and expectations are being raised. People are wondering what the constitutional role of the monarchy is in a democratic society. Critics argue that the hereditary nature of the monarchy conflicts with democratic principles, as the monarch's position is based on birthright, rather than merit or popular support. Some question whether a system that assigns power and privilege based on lineage is compatible with the ideals of equality and meritocracy that are valued in contemporary society. Another talking point is the cost of monarchy to the average taxpayer. Critics argue that the royal family's funding from the public purse is an outdated institutional burden. This is said to be a legacy that places a financial burden on taxpayers, especially during times of economic hardship and austerity measures. Supporters, on the other hand, argue that the monarchy brings in tourism revenue and serves as a symbol of national pride and continuity. What are your thoughts on Queen Elizabeth II and her reign?
For centuries, the British monarchy has stood as a pillar of continuity, heritage, and a sense of collective identity. Its traditions have been woven into the fabric of the nation, offering a reminder of time-honored ceremonies, elaborate protocols, and the enduring institution of royalty. Yet, every so often, an event arises that shakes the venerable pillars of this royal edifice, leaving both public observers and royal insiders in a state of collective astonishment. In one such extraordinary turn of events, King Charles has chosen to step away from his royal title. This decision, seemingly born of a convergence of private convictions and public pressures, has ignited heated debates and intense curiosity across the globe. How did King Charles arrive at this watershed moment? What dynamics led him to relinquish the station he once seemed destined to uphold? And what does the future hold for a monarchy that has been forced to confront the realities of modern life in a way it rarely has? The first reactions to King Charles's decision were, predictably, a cocktail of disbelief and fervor. Royal watchers, the media, and the public at large struggled to reconcile the image of Charles as the face of established ceremony with a new vision of him stepping away from a role that has defined him for so many years. Some wondered if his choice was motivated by personal longing, a desire to forge a life unencumbered by ceremonial trappings, while others speculated that this step was part of a broader realignment within the monarchy itself, signaling that even the grandest institutions are not immune to the imperatives of changing times. All at once, questions flooded every corner of public discourse. Was this an attempt on King Charles's part to modernize the monarchy from within, or was it evidence of private struggles made public? Could it be a bid to protect his own mental or emotional well-being, or a response to the friction created by competing visions within the royal family? These layers of speculation did little to quell the public's thirst for clarity. Official statements were spare in detail, providing enough information to confirm the essential facts, but leaving ample space for rumors to flourish. Royal correspondents swarmed to glean any hint of hidden motives, turning an already complicated situation into a maze of theories, counter-theories, and endless commentary. For the British monarchy, an institution built on continuity and respect for established protocols, such widespread public questioning was unsettling, to say the least. Monarchs are typically paragons of steadiness, their decisions reflecting slow and deliberate changes rather than abrupt shifts. But King Charles's choice felt strikingly different. Indeed, the monarchy had seldom seen a development so abrupt since the era of the abdication crisis in the early 20th century. What lay behind this monumental decision? To answer that question, one has to consider the remarkable path King Charles traveled before this moment. Born into a life of inherited responsibilities, Charles spent much of his existence knowing he stood in the direct line of succession, bound to the future role of reigning over the country. From his earliest days, the weight of public expectation hovered, guiding his education, shaping his experiences, and dictating the trajectory of his personal life. Though he had passions, environmental causes, organic farming, charitable ventures, those pursuits were often cast in the light of his impending destiny as monarch. When he finally ascended to the throne, it felt like the culmination of everything his life had prepared him for. Yet, as with all human stories, the linear path from heir to sovereign was accompanied by complications. Critics sometimes labeled him overly traditional, while paradoxically, some contended he was too outspoken on modern topics such as architecture or climate change. The public's perception swung between viewing him as a figure well-equipped to guide a venerable institution into the contemporary era, or an out-of-touch royal uncertain of how to connect with an increasingly diverse and skeptical public. His personal relationships became fodder for endless tabloid speculation, adding an extra burden to the already colossal responsibilities that come with wearing a crown. Against this backdrop, King Charles's recent decision to relinquish his title seems less abrupt than it might appear on the surface. He had long walked a tightrope between honoring ancient customs and wrestling with the need to adapt the monarchy to modern values. Perhaps the tension of that balancing act eventually pushed him to make an extraordinary choice, to carve out a role not entirely dictated by protocol, but by personal conviction and an evolving sense of responsibility. For outsiders, the significance of losing the kingly title is immense. Traditionally, a monarch's position is sacrosanct, conferred at the coronation and regarded as a lifetime station. That Charles would choose to renounce or step aside from it, even in part, raised urgent questions about how the monarchy would recalibrate, how it could maintain its aura of continuity and stability once its central figure decided to leave that role behind. Public reaction to King Charles's move illuminated a growing divide in how people view royalty in the 21st century. Some segments of the public, particularly those with a deep attachment to ceremonial monarchy, viewed his decision as a betrayal of ancient customs. They argued that monarchy by nature is a lifetime commitment, an unspoken contract that links the sovereign to the people. Others, however, saw in Charles a figure of modern leadership courage, someone willing to admit that old forms must give way if the institution is to endure. To them, letting go of the burdens of kingship signaled adaptability rather than abandonment, suggesting that the monarchy might yet shift its focus away from pageantry and toward more tangible forms of service and connection with contemporary society. In many respects, the monarchy found itself at a crossroads, confronted by a stark existential question. Could an institution that has thrived for centuries on ceremonial continuity reshape itself substantially enough to remain relevant, especially when its reigning figure has stepped away from the formal symbols of kingship? The monarchy is historically resistant to dramatic change, preferring incremental evolution over radical transformation. However, King Charles's decision thrust it into uncharted territory. Royal advisors and family members scrambled to manage the fallout, balancing a desire to respect Charles's personal autonomy with the need to preserve the monarchy's unifying function. Everyone recognized that the significance of Charles's choice would reverberate far beyond palace walls. The emotional dimensions of Charles's action were no less compelling. For decades, he bore the title of Prince of Wales, then ascended to become king, a station that placed him at the summit of royal responsibility. The public often glimpsed the formalities, his participation in solemn ceremonies, his speeches addressing national causes, his presence at key events. Few, however, witnessed the personal toll of such constant scrutiny. The monarchy thrives on visibility. Every gesture, every word, every choice of attire can become a talking point. For a man of introspective bent, who once showed genuine fervor for quiet pursuits like reading philosophy or planting trees, the day-to-day demands of monarchy were draining on both emotional and intellectual levels. Stepping back might have been an attempt to reclaim a piece of his own identity, an identity that had remained subsumed by ceremony for much of his life. Observers also note that King Charles's choice may have been deeply influenced by the example of others within the family and beyond. Modern royals like William and Catherine have already shown a flair for embracing new forms of outreach, social media, and more casual public encounters, arguably broadening the monarchy's appeal. Might Charles have felt overshadowed by the ease with which the younger generation navigates the digital age, or possibly inspired by the notion that monarchy can be flexible? Moreover, one can't discount the impact of global conversations about mental health, personal fulfillment, and the challenges posed by relentless public gaze. Charles might have wanted to set a precedent, that it's permissible even for royalty to choose personal well-being over unyielding tradition. Speculations aside, the immediate ripple effects were profound. First and foremost, the monarchy's protocols had to be re-examined. If Charles is no longer king in the formal sense, who stands at the helm of the institution? Is the heir presumptive automatically installed, or does a caretaker figure step in, pending formalities? The line of succession is ordinarily a rigid sequence, but Charles's voluntary relinquishment tested that rigidity. Was his departure final or partial, and what does it mean for the global network of Commonwealth realms that once recognized him as their sovereign? These details needed to be clarified promptly to forestall any constitutional vacuum or public confusion. Then there was the challenge of reorganizing official duties. Ceremonial functions, such as the state opening of Parliament, trooping the color, and the distribution of honors, typically center on the reigning monarch. If King Charles was retreating from the front and relinquishing the symbolic scepter, who would assume these duties? Would the monarchy parcel out responsibilities among multiple senior members, or designate a single figure to represent the crown? Each possibility carried its own consequences for power dynamics within the family. Some family members might welcome the chance to have a more prominent role, while others might feel overwhelmed by the additional obligations. One cannot overlook the emotional and political ramifications for those nearest and dearest to Charles. Figures like Queen Camilla, often seen as his staunchest ally, faced the delicate task of supporting his personal decision, while also honoring the monarchy's collective needs. Rose Hanbury's name has long held a special resonance in British aristocratic circles, her life seemingly woven from threads of tradition, legacy, and a hint of quiet rebellion. Born into a respected noble family, she grew up surrounded by elegant homes, genteel gatherings, and an ingrained sense of duty that shaped her formative years. Even as a child, she was known for her thoughtful demeanor and a reserved charm that set her apart in a social sphere where confidence and affability are prized qualities. From a young age, Rose was taught the customs of aristocratic life: when to curtsy, what topics to discuss at the table, how to project grace and warmth without seeming contrived. Yet, beneath those carefully polished manners, she harbored private dreams that extended beyond the gilded confines of Britain's upper crust. Rose was blindsided by the sudden surge in gossip. She had never angled for the spotlight. Indeed, she had spent most of her life avoiding it, preferring the safety of a measured, dignified presence that placed her neither at the center of attention nor so distant that she became a subject of exclusion. To find herself cast as a focal point of tabloid speculation was jarring. At first, she attempted to ignore the murmurs. She believed that by refusing to dignify unsubstantiated rumors with a response, she could starve the story of oxygen. Yet the media's appetite seemed insatiable. Headlines speculated on her every move. If she stood too close to Prince William at a function, it fueled new whispers. If she avoided certain events altogether, tabloids read that as evidence she was hiding from controversy. Friends and advisors advised her on how to handle the situation. Some encouraged her to give a definitive statement denying all wrongdoing, while others insisted that silence was golden in the face of baseless innuendo. Rose struggled with the choice. She valued her privacy deeply, but also felt a moral impetus to defend herself, not just for her own reputation, but for the sake of her family and the people who had always supported her. Each day that passed without a formal statement only seemed to fuel the rumor mill. At the same time, every new rumor or tabloid headline left her feeling more invaded, as if her personal life, so carefully guarded, was being stripped bare for public entertainment. The stress took a toll on her well-being. She found it difficult to sleep, constantly anticipating the next wave of sensational headlines. Her daily routines, once simple and fulfilling, became tinged with apprehension. Even small outings, such as stepping out for tea or running an errand, could be photographed and then dissected. A life of quiet luxury and understated responsibilities mutated into a never-ending battle against a narrative she never signed up for. Adding to the pressure was the knowledge that her association with the royal family magnified every rumor, every small event, into an international news item. The monarchy, bound by centuries of precedent and the tradition of silent dignity, was unlikely to intervene publicly on her behalf, leaving her to navigate the minefield mostly on her own. Moreover, the rumors cast an unwelcome spotlight on her friendship with Kate, a bond that she had valued for its genuine warmth and mutual respect. Now, that friendship was pulled into the tabloid swirl of speculation. Magazines fueled notions of rivalry, betrayal, or tension. In that environment, even an innocuous moment, like being seated at the same table during a charity fundraiser, could be twisted into an entire narrative about forced interactions or veiled hostility. Rose's relationship with Kate was suddenly tabloid fodder, dissected by outsiders who had never witnessed their genuine rapport behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Prince William faced his own share of public scrutiny. Yet the monarchy's time-honored strategy of silence prevailed. Those who empathized with Rose acknowledged the impossibility of her position. How do you fight an amorphous cloud of rumors without unwittingly giving them more substance? How do you retain your dignity when every attempt to set the record straight can be misconstrued as proof of guilt? At times, Rose considered issuing a firm denial through official channels. Yet she also feared that stepping forward to battle the tabloids directly would entrench her even further in the public eye, a place she never wanted to be. She made a series of measured choices designed to minimize attention. Invitations to glamorous events went unanswered. She reduced her presence on social platforms, restricting any glimpses the world might have of her day-to-day life. With each retreat, the tabloids pounced, interpreting her withdrawal as evidence she was avoiding Kate or being exiled by the royals. In truth, her decision to step back was more about self-preservation than anything else. She sought refuge among her closest circles. Yet the scandal refused to burn itself out. The story had all the elements the public relished. A supposed love triangle, a glamorous aristocrat, the future king and queen, and an official silence that left imaginative spaces for rumors to flourish. In some corners of social media, she was vilified. In others, she was defended as a victim of tabloid cruelty. Her life's narrative had splintered into countless versions, each retold by people who had never met her. Behind closed doors, she grappled with anxiety and a deep sense of frustration at how swiftly an unsubstantiated rumor could overshadow her years of dignified discretion. Eventually, the emotional strain reached such an intensity that she realized something had to change. She could not continue living as the unwitting protagonist in a public drama that showed no sign of ending. After much deliberation, she decided to take a decisive step, a formal announcement that she would step away from public life. The statement came through a single, carefully worded communication to a well-regarded British paper that had historically treated her with at least a modicum of fairness. She explained that she valued her privacy, that the speculation had taken a personal toll, and that she intended to focus on her family and personal pursuits away from the Klieg lights of paparazzi and endless gossip. The media reception was immediate and intense, as expected. Some outlets interpreted her announcement as tantamount to an admission that she had something to hide. Others claimed she was being bullied out of her rightful social circles by an unrelenting rumor mill. More sympathetic voices framed her departure as a courageous act of self-defense, a measured refusal to let public scrutiny consume her life. Rose, now resolute in her choice, refused to be drawn into further commentary. For her, stepping away was not about winning an argument or feeding a controversy. It was about preserving her well-being and reasserting a control she felt had been snatched from her. Over the following months, she began the practical work of retreating from the public arena. She scaled back her participation in aristocratic events, politely declining invitations that would have placed her in the direct line of tabloid attention. She also shifted her philanthropic energies towards smaller charities and organizations where she could contribute more discreetly. Instead of hosting lavish fundraisers or making high-profile appearances, she worked quietly in the background, offering her time and financial support without any fanfare. Her circle of close friends grew tighter, focused on those who had demonstrated unwavering loyalty and respect for her privacy. There were whispers, of course, that this departure could be temporary, that in time she might re-emerge. But Rose herself felt a profound relief in stepping off that public stage. Where once her days had been governed by social calendars and insidious rumors, she now woke to simpler rhythms: a morning walk, an afternoon spent reading or practicing photography, evenings dedicated to meaningful conversation with family and longtime confidants. Freed from the need to second-guess how each move might be perceived, she discovered a sense of peace that had long eluded her. Naturally, the tabloids were slow to let go. They spun stories about her reclusion, suggesting it was forced upon her by royal decree, or that she was harboring bitterness over alleged slights. But as time passed, and she consistently refused to re-engage, the appetite for new material about her dwindled. Other controversies arose to occupy the front pages, and the ceaseless churn of celebrity news found fresh subjects. Gradually, Rose's name became less frequent in the columns. Whenever it did surface, it was little more than a footnote, an echo of a once sensational storyline that people had largely moved on from. Meanwhile, within the royal family, the fallout took a subtler form. Kate carried on with her duties, sometimes facing questions about Rose that she politely sidestepped. Prince William, adhering to protocol, remained silent. In official settings, neither mention nor hint of the rumors was ever made. Palace aides presumably noted that the silent strategy seemed effective, and from the monarchy's perspective, the entire ordeal was best left to fade from collective memory. While no public statement was ever issued on behalf of the royals to clarify the true nature of Rose's connection to them, their unwavering silence was itself a statement that they did not deem the rumor worth acknowledging. Behind the scenes, there were quiet regrets. Kate was said to mourn the carefree closeness she had once shared with Rose, a friendship tested and strained by the swirl of unwanted attention. Those who knew the two women personally understood that whatever tensions had arisen, the root cause was never real enmity, but rather the media's compulsion to pit them against each other. But high-profile lives leave little room for clarifications, especially when clarifications might only perpetuate the gossip cycle. Thus, both women moved forward, carving separate paths in a world that had often thrust them together in ways they never orchestrated.
Royal Princess Anne, she has opened up the room and opened up her schedule to do something she rarely does.
Just minutes ago, Princess Anne stunned the world with a heartfelt and emotional farewell to Buckingham Palace. Her words left millions of royal watchers in shock as they realized that the royal family is not as invincible as they once thought. In a candid moment that broke royal protocol, Anne opened up about the impact the palace had on her life and how it shaped her journey. But what made this farewell so unexpected? Princess Anne, known for her stoic demeanor, revealed a side of herself that many thought didn't exist. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a deep reflection on everything Buckingham Palace symbolized for her. Was this a final emotional release or a strategic move? Her words will change how you see the royal family forever. In her emotional goodbye, Princess Anne didn't just speak about her time at Buckingham Palace, but she revealed the silent, unseen struggles she faced while living under its roof. This wasn't the royal image everyone has come to know, perfect, polished, and untouched by pain. Anne's honesty about the weight of royal expectations, the pressure, and even her desire for personal freedom shocked the public. Was this the real Anne, or was she just tired of the expectations placed on her by the monarchy? She opened up about how, for years, the palace felt less like a home and more like a gilded cage. Her words suggested that perhaps it was time to move on, not just from the palace, but from the heavy burden of royal duty itself. As Anne spoke, there was a clear message for anyone listening. The royal family, despite its image of unity, is far from flawless. The emotions were raw, the reflections deep, and the words revealing. Princess Anne's farewell was not just about Buckingham Palace, it was about her own evolution as a member of the royal family. Her life, dictated by duty, was coming to a crossroads. Could this moment mark the beginning of a shift in how royals engage with the public and their duties? For the first time, Princess Anne was openly questioning the very system she's lived under for decades. What followed in her emotional speech left everyone questioning her future role within the royal family. Princess Anne didn't just say goodbye. She hinted at stepping back from the limelight. Was this a soft rebellion against the monarchy? Could the monarchy itself be headed for a major change, with Princess Anne leading the charge for a new era? Anne's words were not just a reflection, they were a potential warning to the royal family. Could this moment signal the beginning of the end for Buckingham Palace's hold over its most famous family? As the royal world processes this monumental announcement, one thing is clear. Princess Anne's emotional farewell has shaken the monarchy to its core. What do you think this means for the future of the royal family? Could this mark the beginning of a much-needed change, or is it simply the reflection of a tired royal under too much pressure? Stay tuned, because there's much more to come in this unfolding story. The secret behind Princess Anne's decision to leave Buckingham Palace will shock you. What made Princess Anne decide to bid farewell to Buckingham Palace? It wasn't just a desire for privacy or a simpler life. No, her decision goes much deeper. In her emotional farewell, Anne revealed an unexpected truth about her royal journey. For years, the public only saw a polished, strong princess, but behind the scenes, Anne's life was much more complicated. While the palace represents tradition, power, and duty, it also became a place of personal struggle. Her words about feeling trapped in the royal system resonated with many who believed she thrived in her role. But what made Anne truly decide to step away? For Anne, the constant spotlight and the pressure of royal duties became more than just a burden. It became a wall. She spoke candidly about her frustrations with the constraints of palace life. Unlike other royals who seemed to enjoy the luxury and glamour of their positions, Anne found herself seeking more than what Buckingham Palace could offer. But it wasn't just a case of wanting privacy or peace. Princess Anne was searching for something deeper. Her farewell was not just about leaving a building. It was about leaving behind an institution that, for decades, had dictated her life. The question remains, what does this mean for the future of the monarchy? Anne's personal reflections revealed a level of dissatisfaction that few expected. While many view her as the quintessential royal, always composed and duty-bound, Anne confessed that her journey through the royal family was far from ideal. She talked about the weight of tradition, and how, over time, it stifled her growth. It was as though she was constantly suffocated by the expectations of her title. Princess Anne's decision to leave Buckingham Palace wasn't just a personal choice. It was a bold statement against the very fabric of royal life. Is this a message to other royals who feel similarly constrained? Anne's exit might be the beginning of a royal awakening that could change everything. The media reaction has been explosive, with some seeing Anne's departure as a rebellion, while others speculate about her deeper motivations. Was Anne trying to reclaim her personal identity? Or was she sending a message about the pressures faced by all royals? Whatever the reason, Princess Anne's words have opened a Pandora's box of royal truths that the public wasn't ready for.